want to come put the other PowerPoint going? What I want to do now, do you have any quick, like 30-second questions for me before we go into the roundtable? I must have not done a good job. They don't have any questions. What I'd like to do is get Bill up to the front. You, Bill, not the other Bill. Judy, Tom, Elizabeth. Where's Mark? Mark, John, and myself.
Almost got caught.
Come on. Come on. What time is it? Yeah, I mean now. 4 o'clock? All right. You know what I did? I actually got through that fast enough to put us right back at 4 o'clock. Does anybody need a break? Do y'all need a break? Because I know we didn't take one.
Oh.
I knew you called it right over there.
Everything is.
7:30, yeah.
And Judy. And that's it?
Because once they're all up there, that's good.
We're going to take pictures. I'll see. We'll come back. We'll come back. We'll come back.
A weird picture, you know. Doing weird stuff.
All right. It's not too often we're going to get this much talent in one place. Okay, so you have 10 minutes. We're going to do round table questions. Everybody gets one. Okay, so unless we have more time after. Shoot.
I think Tom. My listings, I center them. And to me, I think it's going, you know, I can see this in one thing. Reading to the left, I have to read. And somebody told me it's easier to read everything centered left. It's tiring on the eyes when it's centered. In paragraphs.
Yes, you are correct. It's also easier to read if it's not justified, where you have the right side lined up.
Yeah.
If you have it unjustified, like newspaper columns typically are justified.
Yeah.
It's easier to read if it's not.
Okay, so
and
my
also I
centered
think
stuff is not wrong.
it's also easier to read if the left side lines up. Where no matter where it's on the page, if you have a short phrase and a longer one,
Yeah.
and it's all centered like poetry typically is
Yeah.
written, it is harder to read in my opinion.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Plus,
Okay.
also I think if you move it to the left, it's
Yeah.
called left justified.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
You have less problems with it spilling over if it's too wide.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Especially if you
I
use a
take care
template.
of that, yeah.
You know, if you use a template, it can be a problem. If you use just straight
I know,
text,
I
it's
do.
not.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Who's next? Gladys?
This one's for Bill. Phaedra hit on the new tax law that might get passed, and I wanted to know if Bonanza was going to implement something into Bonanza where we can add the tax, or is it still going to remain as it is now?
Well, certainly if there was a law that applied to everyone, it would become a very high priority. Right now, a lot of our sellers set up their tax through PayPal or through Google Checkout or through something like that. So even though we don't have the tax built into the store, they still are able to collect that through the different payment channels. But being able to implement tax into Bonanza itself is something that that is on our list and is, you know, prioritized amongst our other things, even if that law isn't passed. But if that law did pass, then it would be very, very high on our list.
Thank you.
Who's next? Oh, come on. Look at this talent.
Question.
Go ahead.
Okay, I basically got on the site just to sell stuff I had, you know, and get rid of that first and everything, and I'm real busy with my real life job. But I've always been interested in starting up a business, more, you know, an actual business, aside from just getting rid of things. So my question is, when I started, I just, you know, picked a name and, you know, kind of went forward with that, which isn't the best name, I know, to start a business. So if once I determine exactly what I want to focus on, is it best to go ahead, even though I've got tons of feedback, been on there 2 years, best to start a new booth, totally new username and everything?
We could change your username.
But I kind of go with the thing where your booth and your username, I like them better to be the same.
See,
I
it's
just-
difficult, honestly, for us to answer that question for you. And I'm explaining to you why. You've created somewhat of an identity, but I think you feel it might be identity for where you want to go in the future.
Right,
So
because
you're
it was
at
kind of
that
a name, a
juxtaposition.
fun name.
So should you start fresh with absolutely no feedback and get your branding and your name and your marketing all done right from scratch? Or do you try to do a U-turn from where you're at?
Basically.
There's
Now,
only-
let me ask you this question. How bad is it hurting your business?
How bad would?
How bad is having what you have right now hurting your business?
The name I have?
Yes. You
If-
don't know, that's the problem.
No.
When you figure that out, then you'll be able to easily
Answer that
make the
question.
Well,
decision.
how can I figure that out?
Well, that's not my problem. You're gonna have to, but I mean, you're really gonna have to figure, is this hurting my business? And if it's not, then it's pretty much it doesn't matter. And it probably doesn't matter,
I
because
don't,
people are buying product.
okay, now I'm considering the little that I do, the little I know online and everything, I think I've done fairly well. I don't have that many high dollar things, and I'm not on Facebook, Twitter, any of that at the time. But it's more, like I said, just getting rid of stuff. So it's not the same as if I wanted to focus on, like, you know, like Phaedra was talking, on a certain type of market area. Maybe the name I've got hasn't heard it in the past, but I'm not for sure it would sound serious enough to.
I think I can give you a really good example here. How many of you know Olive Olay? Used to be your grandmother's
Oh, yeah,
facial
yeah.
cream, right?
Yeah.
They completely reinvented themselves. Have we seen the new, and it's now just Olay? So there are ways to work around and change, and completely revamp. We see businesses do it all the time. Olive Olay is just a very good example, because I know when I was growing, I wasn't using that. That's for grandma. Now I look at it in the store, I'm like, wow, that is fantastic. So maybe consider something like that. You know, how can you kind of rebrand without going all the way back to the steps and go? But John's right. You're really the only person that can truly answer that question. Sincerely.
But Bonnie, if you decide to change your name, your booth name, your booth title can be changed anytime you want.
Right.
We can change your user ID and you can keep your feedback.
They did it for me when I did the first.
You won't lose any. You won't lose your emails in the past. You won't lose your transaction history. We just simply change. You can't change it, but we can.
Well, that's kind of what I was wondering. I know as the site itself is growing. I mean, there's like, I can go on the forums now, and I've been real busy lately, so I've been not on the forums as much. And I go on there, and there's so many people I've never heard of. But vice versa, there's a lot of them that I'd probably go on tomorrow, and there'd be people that joined 2 months ago. Well, I'd never heard of them.
Would you also change
You
your
know, so
avatar?
I don't know if,
Would you also change your avatar?
I've done that. I
No,
changed
if
it for
you
Christmas
changed
in
your
July.
name, would you also change your avatar? Because
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
your avatar, which is, you know, part of your
Right.
identity, if you don't change that and you change your name, if you're in the forums and you're
Oh,
doing,
okay.
people are gonna still recognize who you are if you change your username. Because
That's
a
that
very
is
good
part
point.
of your identity.
No,
So we
that
have,
is true.
yes.
I have a couple of questions. I've only been a Bonanza for 1 month.
Oh,
I have 10
wow.
items.
Welcome.
I have 10 items listed, that's all. But I'm already thinking, okay, I'm not gonna leave this junk on here this long. I want to know, I'm going to give it 6 months, 3 months. Is there a time when, now I deal in old stuff, so unfortunately I don't always have the benefit of a brand name. They're one of a kind. So, they don't get pulled up often. So, all right, 3 months from now, I've still got this silly little figurine that's been on there that I love but nobody else does. I'm ready for her to go away. What is sort of the considered time one should allow for that? Or is there?
John has a good answer to that about it being your baby or your business. He did an excellent one on that one, just because you love it. Yeah, John?
Oh, I have no. I think Judy's gonna know this one. That's what I was thinking. I was like, she's gonna be good.
I sell vintage,
Oh, there you
Excuse me?
I sell vintage
There's the
things.
connection right there.
Uh-huh.
You know, I go to estate sales and buy things, and they're one-off things. Nobody else has them on the site. The thing is, the right buyer will come along, but it may not be in 3 months. But, you know, it depends, how long you keep it around depends depends on how long you're willing to keep it around in a storage space. You know, if you get around to it again, you go, oh man, I still have that thing. Then you can decide, okay, is it time to donate it and then delete it from my inventory or keep it there? But someday the right buyer will come by.
True.
It will.
We're not charging you every 30 days to list it like some other places.
Every week.
So, or every week, so it can sit there, and I think Elizabeth has a good point. If you can leave it on the shelf until it does sell, but you should look at, does your title match what people would be searching for? Does, you know, like, I don't know what kind of item it is, but would they enter that into Google to find that particular item? You couldn't say like child figurine. That's not maybe descriptive enough. So what is it? Is it a religious child figurine? Is it a clown child figurine? Maybe a little bit more descriptive on the title, so that you have a bigger potential match, you know, from a buyer.
Okay, and my second question is, and I'll shut up. Is it, I guess I probably go into a paragraph to describe my stuff. Of course, I always put in color, size, condition. But I do it in a paragraph versus the little one-liner things. But is it wise or not wise on Bonanza to suggest what it could be used for? For instance, I right now have listed a little beaded purse. It's a vintage purse, but I suggested on the site would make a nice wedding purse. In other words, it would be, it's actually a little evening purse, but it would be a wonderful, because it's white with pearl encrusted, that it would make a nice bride, you know, that a bride could carry.
Judy, you want to say that?
Is that wise to suggest things?
I guess my question would be is why wouldn't you suggest it?
Okay.
Absolutely.
First of all, your description field is searchable. So if you put in that this would make a perfect Mother's Day gift, this would make a perfect bridal for the bride and bride, all those terms are searchable. So somebody who's looking for a Mother's Day gift, your listing can be served up. And not everybody is creative. They'll look at that and think, what do I use it for?
I realize that. I've been in other businesses to know that people really don't have any imagination.
But don't waste your Google allotment of how many characters they use for indexing to suggest that it will make a great carrier for a bowling ball. Okay, that was a joke.
Rose,
Oh.
what's next?
I could have easily missed this, but I know when I was listing a bunch of these, I really would have loved this, and I could be missing it. But I'm wondering if there's any plans to allow us another blank jump page so we can do things like grading or a little bit more information on a product that we have a bunch of. Because there's some where I don't want to put it in the body, and that's what I was having to do. And same thing with grading. I mean, we're at the point where pretty much everything we do has got grading, and we've got particular grading, and that would really help. But again, with not having it so much, I'd love to be able to say, if you'd like to see our grading, here's the jump. And I'm just seeing, I'm seeing like the profile, the booth details. Is there any plans to maybe give us another page?
Well,
That'd be awesome. Please?
well, I think that it would depend, whether we would do that would depend on the scale to which it would be useful for our selling audience as a whole. That particular request hasn't been one that we've heard very often, and so.
Well, I mean, for anything. I mean, just a blank page so people could do it for a color or a little bit more description. Maybe they could change it out. Just something that gives somebody where they have just a little bit, so it doesn't have to be in every single listing if they're selling something that's.
Well, you can add something like that to your booth details page. You can have, there's area where you can say more details about my booth, and there's like 4 or 5 different fields on there where you could explain these are what the ratings mean for my items.
But I'm also talking about like when you're doing, like if you have, say, possibly several 100 of a particular type of item and you want to give more information on that item, and it just doesn't make sense to do it when you've got, say, 3 or 4 items like that where you need more information on a specific item. I mean, I'm just thinking like one
Have a
blank
suggestion.
page, and that could work for anything. anybody for anything they're selling.
Go ahead.